This is Simon Howard, and he's gonna ask the question, are Windows listening? So give him a nice applause so he can get a bit welcome in here.
Yeah, that better? Okay, yep. So I had it on mute. Okay, I'm Simon Howard. I'm from a little country called New Zealand. I'm going to be talking about are the vendors listening? So this is a look inside the Magic Quadrant, and that's the Gartner Magic Quadrant. I'll talk about that a bit later. Okay, so I'm a security engineer, and I work for a large MSSP, which is a managed security service provider in New Zealand. Large by New Zealand standards is like 20,000 users. So in Europe, I think we're just like, it's like your home basement sort of MSSP. Started life as a coder, and now I like building things like big managed services, and I like breaking them as well. So it's fun, and I also like burnouts. Okay, so what the whole idea for my talk, or looking at content SMTP filtering products, was there's lots of great research being done in the community. So we've got like Ofer Erkin, who was talking about the bypassing NAC solutions yesterday or today, I think. PTAC and Newsham, they've done lots of work on IDS evasion and denial of service. Caswell and HT Moore, they did more IDS bypass techniques that you could use on your IDSs that you buy to see how good they actually are. And Anton Rager did a lot of work on breaking various IKE implementations. So what I did was, a guy called, I did this talk in New Zealand, or a similar one about, and I couldn't pronounce his name. I was saying 3 Papa, and a Russian guy came out of the audience to go, oh, his name is Z Raza, and that's how, so I got that pronunciation sorted for today. He released a paper in 2002 called Bypassing Content Filtering Software, or Bypassing Content Filtering. A couple of guys called Marks and Ackerman, I think they work for Virus Bulletin. In 2002, they took Z-Raza's original paper and they wrote up like 500 or so test cases and sent it out to 43 different vendors. And these are techniques to get past the vendors' content filtering engines, right? They sent them all out, and then they waited 6 months, and then they published all the responses from the vendors. And all the vendors were like, yes, we're going to patch this, or coming out on the next release, and we've tested all your filtering bypass techniques, and nope, they don't work on our products. So after a while, Z Raza, he updated his paper. Now it rolls along, it's 2007. And I thought, well, surely all these vendors, all their products are going to be secure as, because these techniques from back in 2002 may have been updated a bit, but they'll be keeping an eye on this white paper. They'll be like getting it every 5 minutes and doing an MD5 sum to make sure it hasn't changed from 2002. So I took it and then I ran it against some SMTP filtering products to see what the story was. So Z Raza's original paper mentions a few vulnerable clients, but mainly it's a brain dump of bypass techniques. It isn't like specifically saying on Symantec, on IronPort, on ClearSwift, these techniques work. It's just saying, here's some techniques, they may work, I'm not sure. Some people have tried them. So I wanted a focused test set of products, and so I chose products that have got a place in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. What Gartner do is, if your product has sold lots and lots of copies and it's worth millions of dollars, then you may be able to, Gartner may come to you and say, we want to include you in our Magic Quadrant, and they'll analyze your product and see how well it does spam filtering and virus filtering and how adept your content filtering engine is at stripping attachments and doing other fancy tricks. So this quadrant is broken down into 4 quarters. There's the leaders, which was Symantec and IronPort that I chose. There's a lot more other than these, but these were the main ones I chose. Some visionaries, challengers, and there's also niche players, but I didn't want, an example of a niche player is SendMail, and you're lost anyway if you're using SendMail. A quotable quote from this paper that I particularly like. The market is defined by vendors that provide enterprise protection against inbound email threats and fulfill outbound policy requirements at the SMTP gateway. So that's a quote out of their report for that year. I think in quarter 1, 2008, perhaps they're releasing the next version of this paper. They don't just do it for email security products, they do it for IDS and disk encryption and yeah, lots of different products. Okay, so I needed a method to do my testing with. So I needed a file type to prove if the attachment stripping techniques were working or not. VBS came across as a good one because you can't do true type file detection on it. It doesn't start with a magic header like MZ. It's just source code basically in a file, and it's not like Perl or Python or something where you got your shebang and then you got user bin env for Python. Yeah, it's just some plain text that is default executable on Windows. So here's my wee test script here. Hello world. What I then did was installed and configured each of the products. So I chose 8 different SMT boundary filtering products, as you saw before from my Gartner. They are selected from the Gartner quadrants. And I configured each of them as per the user documentation to strip or to deliver filtered messages to Postfix. So it would strip the attachment. I set it up strip startup VBS, or maybe on the product it will have like malicious attachment stripping, and that includes VBS. So I'll tick that box, or maybe I have to write some custom filters, but the documentation tells me how to do this. So I'll go along those lines, configure it how any normal user would do it. That was my goal. Then pump all the test cases in, and then retrieve the filtered messages with my mail clients and see what the result was. I was hoping that I wouldn't see anything. I was hoping it's going to be stripped attachments across the board. Well, I wasn't really hoping that, because then I wouldn't ever talk. Okay, so here's a wee diagram of the environment. Message comes in, attachment stripped, pops into Postfix, and then I've got a POP3 client on there, Dovecot, and I pull it out with the email clients, and I've got Malform mail. Okay, so the products that I tested. Before I said, so here's the exact versioning. If you've got these at home, then you can follow along. Proofpoint, they're pretty cool because they give you a VMware virtual image. So for testing purposes, I had VMware set up, and then I'd have Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and then I'd have a Debian, and then I'd have a Windows XP and a Windows 2003. Because each of the products, one of them may not work on XP, might like 2003 better. So I had to go across the board, but Proofpoint, you just chuck the VMware image into VMplayer and crank it up, and you can do your testing. It's great. IronPort, you actually need one of their appliances, so it's a bit harder. But luckily we're friends with IronPort, so they gave me one to test. Yeah, and they are the vendors there. Now the email clients, because I'm fiddling around with attachment file name extensions and the way that it's rendered, sometimes they aren't going to be visible in all the clients, which I'll show you and explain to you later. But Outlook Express, Thunderbird, I completely forgot about Outlook 2007 because our standard build on our desktops at work was still Windows 2000 at the time. But I would like to test it sometime. I'm pretty sure it's fairly the same as Outlook 2003. They hadn't changed much in the rendering engine there. And of course, dirty old Lotus Notes. Okay, the control file. So this is what the control file looked like so that I could send it through the engine and test that attachment stripping was working as intended. So I just used, unfortunately I'm not a Python zealot like a number of people here today. I love my Perl. See, I have a show of hands for Perl programmers here. Terrible. So I used the Perl MIME-Lite libraries and constructed up this email. You can see here, this is base64 encoded hello world. Well, it's not actually hello world, it was some other VBS script that I nicked off the internet, but it's not malicious, just pops up a message box and says something. Okay, and close up, this is what it looks like. So you've got your content disposition, and your attachment file name equals VBS, and then you've got your content type, application octet stream, file.vbs. So it's basically telling the email client and the filtering product that there's a VBS file in their email. Now, I needed to modify this various ways as according to Zeraz's paper to get past the SMTP filtering products. I base 64 and quoted printable, encoded the file name. I injected a few nulls here and there, sort of along the same lines of Brett Moore's same bug, different app stuff. And then I removed non-vital sections of the MIME. So here's a list from Zeraz's original paper of all the different modifiers that I attempted. So we've got encoded file names, multiple file names, null bytes, unsafe fgets, trying to do buffer overflows. None of the clients were susceptible to that, thankfully. UU encoding, changing the case sensitivity is something as simple as that. Missed MIME version, so I'll go through these in a bit more depth. Okay, so initially I had about 118, I think, I can't remember the exact number of test emails, and then I cut that down to 58 really solid test cases. For some of them, the email attachment, like with the control file, it would be stripped by all products. So I'm not going to bother including that in my test results because all the email clients can render it and all the content filtering products can strip it. Similarly, if I've got a test case that none of the email clients can render, then there's no point in including it because it's not going to be a malicious file. And I got some fairly interesting results. Okay, so we'll start with the content disposition and fiddling around with the way the file name is represented inside the email. So there's some pretty simple things that I did here. Normally, your file.vbs is represented inside quotes or ticks. I took those ticks off. I put the ticks at the front. I put an extra dot in front of things. I took the ticks out completely, put one tick in there. This US ASCII is a character set, and then Q is quoted printable, but then I didn't quoted printable my file name. So that if it was quoted printable, it would be equals, and then the quoted printable thing for an F, but I just put it in there straight out. And the same with base 64. That's not base 64 encoded, that's just plain text. So the results of how the email filtering products interpret these names and how the email clients interpret these names is what I'll show next. Okay, so this is for test case number 1, content disposition. I'll go into this in closer detail because it's quite hard to see from afar. But the white dots, on the left-hand side you've got 5 email clients, and on the right-hand side you've got the 8 filtering products. So if you've got a white square in the email filtering product side, that means the attachment isn't valid. It can't see it, basically. And likewise on the right-hand side, if you've got a white square, it means that attachment wasn't stripped. So there's a few dots in there, so it's kind of interesting. Let's have a look at it closer. So here's just the first 4 test cases. In the email clients, the first 2 test cases, which were, if we go back here, file.vbs, and with and without the quotes, it was rendered successfully. Test case number 3, Outlook Express, Outlook 2000, Outlook 2003, they all rendered that attachment successfully, but in Lotus Notes and Mozilla Thunderbird, they didn't know what to do with it. So test case number 3 is with the 2 quotes at the start. So okay, that's kind of interesting. And on test case number 4, Notes knew what to do with it, but Thunderbird was still lost. And this is what the invalid attachment would perhaps look like. Now this is from test case 15, as you can see in the subject line, but it just looks mangled. It's a tilde and a bracket and a caret, so you're not going to be able to double click on that and execute the VBS code. Similarly in Notes, what a beautiful email client it is. You can see here the file name is just some kind of crazy DAT file. Yeah, that's not VBS. Hands up here who uses Lotus Notes as an email client. By choice? No. Yeah. Look at that. Simple, nice, clean, terrible. And if the